My husband hadn't lifted a finger to help with housework ever since we got married. Instead, he'd come asking for things and act like a child. Even after our daughter was born, he didn't change. When our daughter suffered from a high fever, I was frantically nursing her. I told him I didn't have time and he'd have to figure out dinner himself. He unexpectedly got mad at me.
If you dare prioritize the kid over me, then we're getting a divorce.
I didn't hesitate and gladly agreed to it. Too late now, if you regret it. A few days later, I received a frantic call from him, clearly on the brink of losing it. I'm Ada, 30 years old. I'm a reasonably successful children's book author. I used to be a regular office worker, but retired when I got married. At my husband's request, I became a homemaker, but I had too much free time after finishing the chores. So I decided to pursue my dream of becoming an author of children's books. I married Dean 2 years ago. We were high school classmates and reconnected at a reunion. We happened to sit next to each other, and after a few too many drinks, he inexplicably started weeping. He explained that he got turned down after proposing to his partner, who wasn't considering marriage. I couldn't leave him alone, and ended up taking care of him. We kept in touch afterward, and as I comforted him over his heartbreak, we started dating and eventually got married. We lived in a rented apartment together. Despite wanting to say we had a happy married life, reality didn't align. My impression of Dean while dating was that he was carefree and humorous. I wasn't wrong, but it wasn't entirely right either. It was only after our marriage that I realized he was a selfish, spoiled brat. He somehow never fully became a mature adult. He was pampered growing up as an only child with aging parents. Due to this background, he was excessively doted on. I began to realize this after we started living together. First off, he was very picky about food. Whenever I served fish for dinner, he always asked me to remove the bones and flake the meat for him. When he first asked, I thought he was joking. I never thought someone in their late 20s would seriously ask for such a thing. Since then, I always prepared the fish as he preferred. It was honestly a hassle, but if I didn't, he'd just leave the entire fish uneaten. Also, he was a fervent vegetable hater. He could manage potatoes and pumpkins, but he hated bell peppers, cucumbers, carrots, and onions, saying they smelled too grassy. I had to finally chop them for cooking, which was quite tedious. Additionally, he made a mess in the bathroom by leaving clothes scattered everywhere. He didn't even bother to fold them or gather them in one place. I ended up collecting his scattered clothes every time. I had asked him to put them in the laundry basket, but his behavior never changed. Moreover, he asked me to prepare his roomwear and towels for him. Even when I asked him to do it himself, he was reluctant and avoided it. If I left it, he wandered around the house in his boxer shorts. He lacked a sense of shame and even answered the door like that. So, during his shower, I reluctantly prepared his clothes for him. An irresponsible man like that could never hold jobs for long. Whenever he felt a little unwell or tired, he called in sick. Even if I were the boss, I'd fire him. Plus, he wasn't able to handle criticism. A small reprimand from his boss, and he immediately quit the job. The salary decreased with every job change. Luckily, my work was going well. I was getting orders from publishers, and my royalty was increasing. So, I didn't have many complaints about our living expenses. However, because I was making money, he no longer felt any urgency to work. He was under the impression that it was all good if he slacked off at work. Whenever he had time, he just played games on the phone. He spent money on in-app purchases, even if he didn't have any allowance left. I don't mean to say playing games was bad, but he bothered me that he kept spending on unproductive leisure when he wasn't making much. Hey, I found a receipt in the trash can. Did you spend on your games again? You bought something just the other day. We agreed that you'd limit your monthly spending to $30, right? When I scolded him, he shrugged it off.
Don't get so mad. I just really wanted that limited time item. I'll try not to spend next month.
He'd casually apologize, but he never kept his word. He was a grown adult, so why couldn't he manage money sensibly? He seemed to remain a handful no matter his age. It was like I was his mother rather than his wife. Initially, I found his reliance cute and charming, but soon it became nothing but frustrating. I was stuck in a state of annoyance, but unable to take the step towards divorce, so I was troubled. Then I found out about my pregnancy. Dean was thrilled with the news. I was genuinely happy about having a baby and had some hopes too. Maybe, if he became a father, he'd finally grow up a bit. But, to cut to the chase, my expectation was too optimistic. During my pregnancy, his selfishness didn't improve. Even while I suffered from morning sickness, he'd ask for food and laundry to be done. When I asked him to take care of things for me, he complained, saying it was the housewife's job. He didn't even help carry heavy bags when we went shopping. He was engrossed in his phone, playing games while I struggled with the shopping bags. And worst of all, when he saw my growing belly, he uttered hurtful words like,
"Disgusting,"
and,
"I can't see you as a woman."
He had no regard to whose baby I was carrying. Despite being a father-to-be, his indifferent attitude made me lose my affection for him rapidly. Eventually, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Irene. After childbirth, I went to stay with my parents for a while. I gave some money to Dean and asked him to manage on his own. My parents were excited to have me and the newborn and urged me to take it easy. I indulged in their advice. But just 2 days later, I got a message from Dean asking me to cook for him. Turns out, he had blown all the money I gave him on in-game purchases. I was truly astounded by that. So, I told him to figure it out himself. To everyone's surprise, he started coming to my parents' house every day to eat. He chowed down without restraint and didn't even bother to clean up after the dishes, let alone show appreciation to my parents. My parents were giving him the side eye despite him being my husband. I was utterly embarrassed by him. Even after becoming a father, his spoiled attitude hadn't changed at all, and I was still taking care of everything. There were other things that bothered me too. He started acting suspiciously. For instance, he claimed to have work-related dinner or overtime more frequently. When he returned, he smelled like soap and didn't let go of his phone. He grinned while staring at it, which creeped me out. I suspected he was cheating, but I let him be. I was fed up with him, to the point that I didn't even care about getting jealous. Then one day, Irene caught a bad cold with a high fever. She woke up crying in the morning, and her face was all red. Since it was a weekend, Dean was at home. I hurriedly prepared to take her to the doctor and asked him to drive. His reply was outrageous.
"Oh no, I can't today. I have plans to meet friends. It's a long-standing arrangement, so I don't want to cancel at the last minute."
Are you kidding me? Irene has a high fever. As her dad, you should prioritize her.
"You're overreacting, you know. She's already won, so she'll be fine in no time." Just lay her down in bed.
I was speechless at his prioritizing his matters over a serious issue concerning our child. Irene's cries brought me back to reality. While we argued, her condition was worsening. I didn't have time to waste. I immediately called a car service and headed to the clinic. The doctor diagnosed her with a viral cold and assured me she'd recover soon with medications. After having an IV treatment, we returned home late afternoon. Then I managed to get her to sleep after giving her medicines. I was busy looking after her, so the house was a mess. I was too exhausted and planned to clean up the next day when I had more energy. Just as I took a break, Dean returned home. He glanced at the room, frowned, and started complaining.
Hey, what's up with this mess? Can't you even clean even though you're a stay-at-home? And where's my dinner?
Fed up with his selfish complaints, I couldn't hold back and retorted harshly. I just came back from the doctor a little while ago. Can you see that I was busy? I'll clean up tomorrow. Figure out your own food.
That's unacceptable. Do your duties as a wife properly. Clean the house now and get my dinner ready.
I already told you no. I wasn't fooling around like you were. You're an adult. Stop being so selfish. I'm going to bed. I took Irene to the bedroom and went to sleep. The next day, when I woke up, Dean was nowhere to be seen. I felt it was convenient not to face him. Late that night, when he returned, he showed me a printout of a petition for divorce form.
I'm divorcing you for prioritizing our kid over me. Pack your things up and get out of here.
Staring me down, he triumphantly declared. It was ridiculous for him to easily bring up divorce just because he didn't like my attitude. I never thought he was that stupid. But in fact, it suited me just fine. Sure, let's do that. I quickly agreed and started packing my belongings. He looked puzzled by my calmness, but didn't stop me. Give me a few days to find a lawyer. I placed Irene in a pram and left the apartment I shared with Dean. On my way to my parents' place, I struggled to suppress a smile on my face. Too late, even if he regrets it now. He was on the brink of plunging into a living nightmare. Several days later, Dean, in a half-crazed state, showed up at my parents' house. He aggressively confronted me.
What the hell did you do? You owe me an explanation.
According to him, he received a notice from the management company that the rent was overdue. He also couldn't make utility payments from his account. Furthermore, he couldn't use his card for shopping. I gave him a cold stare while he was yelling and fussing. Let me ask you, what made you think that you could freely use my money as you did before? We're getting divorced, so it's obvious that access to my bank accounts and cards would be stopped. From now on, pay your rent and utilities yourself.
What? Don't act so selfish. Because you weren't taking care of me, we're getting a divorce. At least, pay me alimony.
To his ridiculous retort, I snapped back. You're the one who's going to pay alimony. You were cheating on me. He went pale for a moment and tried to play it off.
What are you talking about?
Of course, I wasn't letting him off the hook. You're planning a trip with your girlfriend, right? And you promised her to buy a designer's bag. What's her name? Mary, is it? You seem to be quite smitten, inviting her to our apartment. I had set up baby cams in Irene's room. I kept quiet about it to him because I thought he was going to object, saying it was a waste of money. On those cameras, I saw him having Mary over and getting cozy. He was even making promises for a trip and an expensive bag. So, I have solid evidence. You're the guilty party, so I'll be demanding alimony and child support. He turned completely pale and immediately dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness.
You know I don't have that kind of money. She's married too, and it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. We won't meet again.
He desperately explained, but it was just too late. You're ridiculous. Even if there hadn't been infidelity, I'd already run out of patience with your selfishness and whims. I'm not your mother. I'm sick of taking care of a grown-up, acting like a child.
Please, don't be so cold.
I'll say what I want now. Aren't you ashamed to make your wife take care of everything at your age? I can't live with someone who prioritizes their own stuff over a child's high fever. Upon hearing that, he flushed red and exploded. He shouted,
You darn woman,
and raised his fist. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed,
Stop it!
My dad and brother restrained him. They are both heavyweight lifters, so restraining him was no big deal. He moaned while he had tears in his eyes.
Ouch! Please let go!
After he tried to use violence against me, seeing him cry over this was truly pathetic. I faced him and bid our final farewell. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Let's handle everything through lawyers from now on. You might struggle to handle a grown-up situation since you're not very mature. Then he was forcibly kicked out by my dad and brother. Afterward, I demanded alimony and child support through my lawyer. He borrowed money from a bad source and paid it all at once. I also went after his girlfriend, Mary. Honestly, I don't hold much grudge against her about the infidelity. If anything, I feel thankful for her being the trigger for a divorce. But in the footage from the camera, she mocked my appearance and called Irene ugly like her mom. That angered me, especially mocking my daughter, so I decided to punish her properly. I sent the footage on the baby cams to her husband, and they ended up divorcing as well. She blamed Dean, and they parted ways after a fight. Dean, chased by debt collectors, is now working deep-sea fishing in the cold northern sea. It seems it'll take a while for the debts to be paid off. As for me, I'm doing my best juggling work and parenting as a single mother. Irene's adored by my family and growing up healthy. My children's books are doing well, and it's been decided they'll be serialized in the future. There might be tough times ahead, but I'm determined to overcome them without giving up.